I didn't have a personal relationship with God. I didn't even know what that meant or looked like. My life pretty much turned into a constant panic attack. The root of anxiety is fear. And so for me, I was very afraid of uncertainty. I had equated this sense of love from others with my self-worth. It was the first relationship that I'd ever been in where I could fully be myself. I'd gotten this thing that I thought that I was searching for, that I thought I wanted this whole time, and it still felt like something was missing. It felt important to me that we were on the same page, but I didn't know what page I was even on. I need to figure out, like, what does faith mean to me?
Yeah.
Do I believe in Jesus? Like, do I really believe in God? Am I a Christian? Why does this feel important to me? I need to figure this out. And then slowly, each day, God was speaking to me. There was still like an underlying piece, which I did not know was going to be a pivotal part of my story. The only way that I can explain surviving that was God helping me. Love, understanding, acceptance, fulfillment, and purpose. Jesus provides that for me. So I'm not going to date just to date. To me, what is the point of dating? There's no need to confuse somebody else. If you are confused yourself, don't involve someone else. Don't do that. Because what we see is so small.
Yeah.
But God sees the whole picture. It took another day or two for me to think back and say, wait, whoa. Because I was in so much pain at the time and feeling so anxious leading up to this conversation. That doesn't mean that God still can't use that. There's a lot of purpose in the pain. Don't lose hope. And if not, he is still good. What are you looking for in dating? Like, what are you hoping to find?
My sister, who is a single woman herself, Caroline French, when I got saved in July 2021, I was like, this is awesome. Like, I gotta tell everybody.
Right.
And then
it's hard when you really experience God's love for the first time. It's hard to not want to like shout it from the rooftops and share it with everyone. Just like, this is what I've been missing this whole time. Power of prayer.
The power of prayer.
Yeah.
Right. Amen. Love you, Caroline.
Love
Thanks
you
so much
too.
for coming on.
Oh, okay.
Do the first ever hug on the podcast.
Yep, this is nice and awkward.
Welcome to the Single Man Podcast, where we delve into candid conversations with Christian men about their journey to faith, advice for their younger selves, and navigating dating. With a heart to reach men from all walks of life, dive into real stories of redemption, growth, and the hope found in following Jesus. I'm your host, Carlton French, a 29-year-old single Christian, and I'm excited for you to listen to this week's episode. Let's jump into it. Hey everybody, it's Carlton French. Welcome back to the Single Man Podcast. We have a special guest today for the finale of the series that we've been doing with women for the last 4 weeks. We've had Victoria, we've had Annie and Hunter, we've had Liberty, and we've saved the best for last.
Oh, high praise.
My sister, who is a single woman herself, Caroline French. Woo, woo, woo. Caroline, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks so much for coming over today and being willing to share some of your story on the podcast and to encourage all the single men and women that are out there. I know this is going to be a really special conversation. So before we jump into things, a little background on Caroline. And also before we jump into things, Caroline and I are both wearing jumpsuits on the podcast today. So
I don't know if what you're wearing would be considered a jumpsuit, but
kind of. I mean, I wore it because I saw what you were wearing, and I was like,
"Oh, did you?
This will
Okay.
be." Well, I did kind of feel like a purple theme.
mood.
I don't
Purple
know.
mood.
The Lord put purple on my mind today. So
Okay.
purple. I'm wearing purple. Caroline's wearing all green. So if you're not watching the podcast, check it out on YouTube or on Spotify. You can watch. So Caroline is 28 years old and single and from Atlanta, Georgia, just like me. And we actually grew up together. Crazy being brother and sister.
Absolutely crazy.
Yeah. So Caroline,
18 months apart.
Yep. 18 months apart, which is pretty cool. And Caroline is one of two sisters I have. Caroline's 28. Courtney is my youngest sister. She's 25 and was just recently married. So congratulations to
Whoop, whoop.
Courtney and her husband, Henry. Hopefully y'all are watching the episode and enjoying it.
That's going to take some time to get used to. The husband, I said that yesterday and I was like, weird.
Yeah, I got to get it right. But Caroline herself is single, so I was like, got to have Caroline on to close out this series that we've been doing with women, and I think it's been a really encouraging series. Been getting a lot of great feedback from you all, and if you haven't already seen the first 3 episodes with Victoria, with Annie and Hunter, and with Liberty, go back and watch those. But honored to have Caroline here today, and just want to give a little background on you, Caroline, for everyone that doesn't know you. Like I said, 28, single from Atlanta, working in project management here in the city, and really passionate about reading, writing, listening to music, being my sister. So
That one especially. We should have started there.
how about this last week, Caroline? What's been going on? A high, a low, so people can get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah. I was thinking about my low driving over here. Not a particular low, really, but I had some days off work. So then getting back into the swing of things, still kind of feeling a little tired. It was nice to see my team again and catch up and everything.
Yep.
But, just takes a little bit of time to get back in the groove. So
Right.
that would be my low. And then my high, I got together with one of my girlfriends yesterday after work, and we spent the whole evening together. She made dinner for us, and we just caught up. Her sister actually got married the same weekend as our sister.
Oh, really?
So we were both sharing in that. It's pretty cool to see the way that God has linked our stories in a lot of ways. We can relate to each other with a lot of things, and we're similar in a lot of capacities. So it was just nice to get to share that with her and process through some things together.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Is her sister older or younger?
Older.
Older, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Sounds good. Well, you excited to be on the podcast?
I'm excited. Yeah.
Well, let's jump into it. So the question we always start off with, how'd you come to know Jesus?
Yeah.
And what was your upbringing like? Excited to hear about it from your perspective.
So growing up, we were raised in a Christian household. We went to church pretty much every week. Grew up praying the dinner table every night. Our parents read us Bible stories. We're familiar with all the main stories in the Bible. But looking back, I'd say that I didn't have or understand what it meant to be in a personal relationship with Jesus.
Yep.
And so God and faith always had a presence in my life. But because I didn't have that personal relationship and understanding of his love for me, I sought that love elsewhere. And I tried to find fulfillment in other things. And really, as early as even elementary school. So, from elementary school all the way through college, it was me almost distracting myself and trying to fill this void by seeking attention from guys or from relationships and trying to find my worth and my identity that way. So every year of college, I had a different relationship. And college was the first time that I experienced true anxiety. So when my sophomore year relationship ended, and it was my longest relationship at the time, this feeling just came out of nowhere. And for people who have experienced anxiety before, it can be very crippling. And that's what it was for me. My life pretty much turned into a constant panic attack.
What does it feel like, or how would you describe it to someone that's never had a panic attack or anxiety?
Your heart is constantly racing. You can't think about or focus on anything else. For me, I couldn't eat. It'd be hard to even watch TV, to try. You have no interest in anything that you previously did. You feel like a shell of yourself. I couldn't even drive. I mean, Dad would come and pick me up most weekends, take me home. I'd stay there. And it took me quite some time to get back to any sort of normalcy. And that normalcy for me was jumping back into another relationship or being interested in somebody else and having that be the center of my focus.
Yeah.
So that I didn't have to focus on any of these other lonely or painful feelings. And so that cycle just continued. And throughout this time, so during college, I wouldn't say that I had strayed incredibly off the path. Like I mentioned, I didn't have a personal relationship with God. I didn't even know what that meant or looked like. But it's not like I was going out and getting drunk or doing all of these things yet.
Yep.
So, and I was still involved in church-oriented things. So I was still plugged into small groups. I was still going to different campus ministry events, even though I didn't fully understand or grasp faith, honestly.
Yeah.
So by the time college ended, I was in another relationship, my longest relationship. And when that relationship came to an end, once I was working full time, I knew that it had the potential to just wipe me out. I was so afraid. It's interesting with anxiety. The root of anxiety is fear. And so for me, I was very afraid of uncertainty, and being in a relationship or being interested, like feeling the love from some other person was where I tried to find a sense of certainty. And I was so afraid of that feeling coming back.
Yeah. Even though you're still in the relationship, like it hadn't ended yet, but you're like, oh, maybe if it does.
Yeah, but I knew that it was coming. Looking back to there were relationships that I stayed in for too long because I was afraid of that feeling when really I was just prolonging the inevitable. So when that relationship came to an end, I had done a lot of research on mental health. I was pouring into exercise, into eating healthy, and I started looking into self-help, listening to podcasts, reading books, pouring into, oh, you really have to love yourself. And temporarily it helped, but then I fell into a really secular way of living and just dating around. And once again, trying to find my worth in other things and other people. But at this point in time, I was almost doing it in more of a, kind of whatever makes me happy. Like I'm just trying to figure myself out. And so I can, this is healthy. This is what I should be doing.
Yeah. What age were you at this point?
At this point, I would have been 22, 23.
Okay.
Yeah. So, fast forward another couple short-lived relationships. Some friends of mine at the time introduced me to this guy that they knew well and, felt like he was a great guy, that we'd be a great match. And they were right. So he and I started dating, and it was the first relationship that I'd ever been in where I could fully be myself. So prior to being in this relationship, I didn't realize that I hadn't been myself, or I'd held back parts of myself because I didn't feel like I would be fully accepted. I had feared rejection, and I'd feared abandonment because I had equated this sense of love from others with my self-worth.
Yeah.
So this was the first time in my life where this safe emotional space was created for me, and it was beautiful. Like, we had this deep connection, and this deep connection made way for me to realize that I'd gotten this thing that I thought that I was searching for, that I thought I wanted this whole time. And it still felt like something was missing. So at this point in time, I still believed in God, and I was identifying as a Christian, but again, I wasn't living that out. I didn't really know what that meant. And he was not a Christian. So that obviously created some tension and rose some questions throughout our relationship, because if we were going to be together, it felt important to me that we were on the same page. But I didn't know what page I was even on.
How old were you at this time?
I was 25.
Yeah, 25. Okay. So taking a step back, how many relationships do you think you were in total between like college and 25?
Like six or seven.
And then how long did you go where you were like intentionally single, would you say? Or like, okay, you weren't talking to someone or dating someone?
A few months, maybe.
Out of like 4, 5, 6 years, like a few months and 6 years, you were single?
Yep.
Yeah. So you were like always kind of in relationships.
Yep. And if I wasn't in a relationship, there was somebody that had my attention, and yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So I just wanted to, maybe that could help, people understand your story and your mindset more. So, okay, then you're back in this like perfect quote unquote relationship.
Yeah.
For the first time after all these other relationships that didn't end up working out.
Yep.
And then still something was missing.
Yep.
So how did you kind of reconcile that? Okay, something's missing versus this perfect relationship.
Yeah. So I think throughout the relationship, I had an awareness of it. Looking back, God was clearly pursuing me, and he had been the whole time. I mean, there were specific moments when I wasn't looking for God's presence. I wasn't thinking about God, but I can look back and remember feeling, whoa, or being emotional because it felt like God was there with me or showing up or prompting me, like tugging on my heart the way the Holy Spirit does. And towards what ended up being the end of our relationship, the two of us, we went to a wedding together, and so he was Jewish, and it was a Jewish wedding, and that was almost eye-opening for me to realize, like, we're really not on the same page, and I need to figure this out.
Like, need to figure what out?
I need to figure out, like, what does faith mean to me?
Yeah.
Do I believe in Jesus? Like, do I really believe in God? Am I a Christian? Why does this feel important to me?
Yeah. Just because you're raised this way or you've done this stuff, but is this actually legitimate? Is this actually true?
Yeah. And I'd never really opened the Bible before. Had I prayed? Sure. Had I ever really prayed an honest prayer and just poured out my heart and talked to God or asked for God's help? Not really.
Yeah.
And so this was the first time in my life where I started to do that. I was reading the Bible daily. I was praying. I was setting boundaries that had not been set in my relationship, where now we were not going to be doing these things that we were previously doing. And so over the course of a couple weeks, God was really changing my heart.
What was the first thing you did, if you remember? Like, okay, you went to this wedding, and then you had this epiphany or something. Like, oh, I need to figure this out.
Yeah.
What was the first step you took, if you remember? So maybe that would help people that are listening.
Yeah. Well, even before the wedding, I'd ordered a Bible, but I hadn't picked the Bible up.
Okay.
So I'd ordered a Bible, and it was just sitting in a box. And I started reading through the New Testament, the Gospels.
Really?
Yeah.
Just like you just picked it out, or why did you start there?
Just to learn about Jesus.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were like 25 or 26 at this point, or?
Yeah, I was 25, about to turn, literally 1 week from turning 26.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. What year was this? Do you remember?
That would have been 2021?
2021?
No, 2022.
2022 August?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, I mean, that was July 2022. That's when I was it 2022? 2022. No, July 2021 is when I was saved.
Okay. So mine was a year later.
Yeah, about a year after me.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, I found out later that Carlton had been praying for me for 1 year.
Yeah, so it was about that long.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh. So anything that I did for that year, like, did that plant any seeds or anything that you remember from that? Or it was like, I was kind of just in my own bubble?
I'm sure. I mean, I'm here now, so yes. And your prayers meant more than anything. God moving, God hearing your prayers. But I think you not pushing things onto me. So you didn't know the details of my relationship, but you could infer that I wasn't, living the way that a Christian would be living.
Right.
But you weren't pushy. You weren't putting pressure on me with it. And I think that's one thing that I've realized now, looking back, that I wish I had done differently at the end of my relationship. It was important to me that, he was doing the same thing that I was in terms of, hey, like, is your Jewish faith? It's fine. Like, if Judaism is really like what you believe in, but don't you want to know? Like, don't you want to look into it too? But I think that I was far less patient than I could have been in, expressing my beliefs and my faith, because it was still, at the time, I hadn't grown enough as a Christian yet. I was so early on in my faith that it was tied to fear of losing him, rather than coming from a place of love, which is where God comes from.
Yeah. So you started doing your own reading of the Gospels,
Yep.
the Bible, start setting some boundaries, and then at some point it kind of clicks, or you're like, okay, I actually believe this, or what was that experience like?
Yeah. I think I don't know that there was one moment or like a day that I just woke up and was like, yeah, Jesus is my Lord and Savior.
Jesus is the Son of God.
But I think that there was a day where a switch did flip for me, the day where I decided, I need to figure this out, and I'm going to go on the path to do that. And then slowly, each day, God was speaking to me, and he was revealing himself to me, and I was feeling more peace. Things were starting to make more sense. And even in spite of all this tension that I was feeling in the midst of my relationship, there was still like an underlying peace that could not be explained in any other way.
So you're single now. So you ended up breaking up, or what was that like?
So August 1st of that year, I woke up that morning. I was spending quiet time with God, and I read Luke chapter 13, which I did not know was going to be a pivotal part of my story at that point in time.
Yeah.
But in Luke chapter 13, it talks about the parable of the barren fig tree. Essentially, a fig tree had been in this garden for 3 years. It hadn't produced any fruit. The owner of the vineyard, or the owner of the garden, comes back, tells the worker, this tree hasn't produced any fruit, cut it down. And the worker says, no, like, let me fertilize around it and see if it produces fruit in a year. Like, leave it alone for a year.
Yeah.
And so I'd written that morning in my Bible, August 1st, 1 more year. And at the time, I thought that was maybe God telling me, hey, stay in this relationship for a year, grow with me, and continue witnessing to him. And when I came home from work in the gym that day, he was sitting on the couch at my place. And I pretty much knew the conversation that was about to take place. He was happy for me that I was pursuing my faith and was very supportive of that, but he couldn't fully understand it and didn't know if he was ever going to get there. And so we were at a crossroads. And we ended up parting ways. And that night, despite, it's still one of the hardest things I've ever been through, like excruciating, would be the hardest thing that I've ever been through if I did not have God.
Yeah.
The only way that I can explain surviving that was God helping me.
Right.
And so as time started to pass, I looked back weeks later and reread that chapter, reread what I wrote. I hadn't realized, wow, no, God was really saying this for me. Leave it alone for a year. Don't date for a year. Focus on me. And I will produce fruit in you. So then I committed to taking a year off of dating altogether just to pursue my relationship with God.
Yeah. So that was still August of 2022
Yep.
to August 2023.
Yep.
You took a year off?
Yep.
Man. So it's been like a year and a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A year and a little bit.
Year and a few months.
Right.
Since you've gotten back into dating, I guess.
Well, I didn't jump back in right away, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I've got some great dating questions to ask you.
I'm ready.
In the
Let's
second
hear
half.
them. Okay.
But before we jump into the dating questions, so just so people can get a sense, maybe like there's somebody going through a relationship now where they're quote unquote like unequally yoked. You always hear that. Or okay, there's maybe a girl listening who's trying to follow Jesus and her boyfriend's not, or the guy she's talking to isn't very serious about his faith.
Yeah.
Talk through maybe advice you'd have for that person. Like, should they stay? Should they break up?
Yeah. I think ultimately, if God wants you to be with that person, he will change their heart and you will be together. But in the meantime, you have to ask yourself, is this pulling me closer to Jesus or further away? And for me, I couldn't grow in my relationship with God the way that I needed to. I can say this now, if I had stayed in the relationship. There are so many things that God has done in my heart. There are so many people that he's brought into my life. So many people that have touched me, people that I've been able to touch because that relationship ended. And so it doesn't mean that God would never bring them back into your life, but God's giving you the opportunity to trust him. You have to surrender this person, knowing that God loves them even more than I do. And that if this is his best for me, he will bring them back. And in the meantime, pray and trust God, because it's an opportunity for him to teach you how to rely on him. And he'll show up for you.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, just the power of prayer. I mean, that was something that when I got saved in July 2021, I was like, this is awesome. Like, I got to tell everybody.
Right.
And then,
it's hard when you really experience God's love for the first time. It's hard to not want to like shout it from the rooftops and share it with everyone. It's like, this is what I've been missing this whole time.
Right.
But not everybody's journey is the same as yours. God's timing is perfect.
Yeah.
And everybody has to come to him on their own time.
Mm-hmm. So I remember, just every day, like when I would have my quiet time, would be praying for you and you to come to know Jesus. And I remember a few times you came to church. I mean, you came to my baptism in October of 2021. And I remember there was a 5 p.m. service like the next summer at Passion specifically in 2022 that you came to. And Sadie Robertson was speaking. I remember praying like, Well, I remember texting you about it, and then I didn't think you came, but I was like, oh man, this would have been like such a great message for Caroline to be at. And
Which message was that?
and then you were actually at it though, so I don't remember exactly what you talked about, but
I think that was the day after we broke up. Maybe. If it was, I remember coming to church the next day, like
okay.
aching.
Oh wow, okay,
Yeah.
might have been, yeah. So yeah, I just like little moments, and honestly, it was more exciting for me
Yeah.
seeing you get saved than even like myself. I was like, wow, I was praying for this.
God
for a year,
answered my prayers,
and,
right?
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
more joyful than even your own salvation, seeing somebody else that you care about and love come to faith. So,
Yeah.
and now to see where you're at, like you're one of the strongest believers I know. So yeah, really a testament to what God's done in your life and how he saved you and
The power of prayer.
the power of prayer.
Yeah.
Right. Amen. So, last thing before the dating questions,
Yep.
if you could go back and talk to younger Caroline when, you're, early 20s,
Yeah.
jump in relationship to relationship, trying to find the sense of security or,
Yep.
this no longer being anxious all the time. What would you go back and tell her if you could?
I would tell her that you're searching for love, understanding, acceptance, fulfillment, and purpose. And you're not going to find them in any of the places that you're looking. The only place you will find those things fully is in Jesus, and he provides them all. And he's never going to leave. It's never going to change. Go there.
Go there. Yeah. That's great. Yeah, I love it. That's something. Yeah. I mean, even when I went through my breakup like a year and a half before this time where you came to know Jesus, but you were kind of telling me about, self-help stuff and,
Yeah.
oh, here's some supplements to take. And
And I'm not saying that stuff doesn't also help, but it's not going to fill.
yeah.
Right.
It's like, this is, okay, the actual solution. And that's kind of like a Band-Aid.
Right.
Yeah.
Getting to the root versus treating the symptoms.
The root. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
The root. Yeah. Awesome. So just amazing to see what God's done in your life, and grateful to have you here now at 28 and single and an expert in dating and relationships.
Whoa. All right.
So kicking off the dating questions, got some hard-hitting ones prepared for you. So
Okay. Let's
if
hear 'em.
thinking through like, okay, how you used to date and then dating now, you said you took a year off of dating.
Yeah.
How has dating changed for you
Yeah.
since becoming someone that's actually following Jesus?
Yeah. In a lot of ways. If I had to sum it up in one word, I'd say intentionality. My life has changed so much over the last couple of years, and God has been so kind in bringing so many loving people into my life, and he's placed community around me and built up all of these other areas in my life that didn't really exist before, to the point where my life is so much richer and it's so full now that I don't, yes, do I desire to have that connection with someone again and to be married someday? Absolutely. But if it doesn't happen, I can still live a full life. I have a full life. And Jesus provides that for me. So I'm not going to date just to date. If I do date, like I said, it's going to be with a lot of intention. I know who I am and I know what I'm looking for. And so I'm not willing to settle. I don't want to take time away from my friends, my family, my relationship with God to pour into something that is not God's best for me.
Yeah. It's good. What have you observed since becoming someone that's following Jesus that men do well and not well in dating?
Things that men do well. So I appreciate boldness. When someone is honest and they're not, again, acting out of a place of fear of rejection, and they just speak what's on their heart. If you're interested and you want to take me on a date, tell me that. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
Even if you get a no, God's still going to use that and work through that, and you're going to grow through it, and you have no idea like what God could do.
Yeah.
So I would say being bold in your pursuit, but also being thoughtful and prayerful about things as well. I think it's important to talk to God before you're moving. Like, where are you getting your marching orders from? Is this just my own feelings and my own desires, and it's not actually going to be best for me or for her? Because it's not just about you. It's there's two people involved.
Yep.
And so you want to make sure that you get the go ahead from God.
Yeah. Same question, but for men that are not Christians, would you have perspective on that? Like, before you were a Christian,
Yeah.
what did men do well and not well in dating?
Yeah. Similar answer in terms of being bold and honest, respectful. Like, respect is a big thing. Taking into account the other person's feelings. It's not, Hamilton said it on the podcast. We've talked about that line. It's not all about you.
Yeah.
It's not about what can I get out of this?
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of what could men do better, so it'll speak to maybe both of these questions.
Yeah.
But you need to be in a place where you're ready to date. And what is the point of dating? The point of dating is to evaluate whether someone could be your partner for life, whether you're going to do this life together and get married, or whether you're not.
Right.
And so if you're not in a place where you're ready for marriage, I mean, no one's ever going to be perfectly ready for marriage, right? But if you're asking a girl on a date and it's just because, oh, well, I'm a little lonely right now, or I don't know, I need some dating experience, or I just want to have some fun, like things are boring right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Don't do that. Please don't do that. You're involving somebody else's emotions, and you're building up expectations for them that you have no intention to meet. Yeah. And it's just confusing. Right. There's no need to confuse somebody else. If you are confused yourself, don't involve someone else.
That's good. It's not like was there like a clear difference? Like, okay, all these guys that are not Christian, these guys that you've met now that are Christian, is it like, whoa, these guys are way better, or not really?
Not that I've witnessed, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, we're all, even as Christians, we're figuring it out. Yeah. You know? Right. And I think that's one thing that turns people away from faith, when they hear somebody's a Christian and then they see that they're not perfect, or they've done things that hurt other people. And, but the point of Christianity, you're following Jesus. So it's a constant, every single day you're waking up, you're dying to yourself, you're trying to follow Jesus to the best of your ability. It doesn't mean you're going to get it right every single day. Most days you're going to get it wrong. Yeah. But you're doing your best. Yeah. And
but a guy that's trying to do that, that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Compared to someone that doesn't have any relationship with faith or with Jesus, and that's not important to them at all.
Yeah. Because when you have a relationship with Jesus, you're trying to know Jesus better. I mean, it's like any other relationship, like an earthly relationship. I want you to know and understand me, and I want to know and understand you. That's how God feels with us. And if you truly get to know God's character and understand more of who he is and how he loves, I mean, God is love.
Yeah.
you're going to then in turn be able to love others better. So I know that I have to partner in life with somebody that knows God's love, because we're going to be able to love each other better, make each other better, love others better.
Right.
Because of that love.
Yeah. That's good. So let's say a man wanted to ask you on a date or get to know you better. What would be your preferred way for someone to do that?
You know what I've noticed? Men seem to not be able to just approach you without asking some question that's irrelevant. Like,
Oh, yeah?
oh, what are you doing at the grocery store? I'm buying groceries. Like, or like, hey, do you know what time it is? So not that way. I would advise against that.
Yeah.
But I get that they're trying to bridge a gap a bit.
When's the last time you just got approached randomly?
A couple weeks ago, the grocery store thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Someone was just like, what are you doing at the grocery store?
Well, I have some bags, like reusable grocery bags, and they had some dogs and like cats on them. And so he comes up to me and he's like, "Oh, those are cool grocery bags. Where'd you get those? You must have a dog." And I'm like, "No." And then he was like, "So what are you doing here?" I'm like, "Grocery shopping." Like,
No way.
yeah.
So what would be your preferred way? Just like, hey. That's
just
kind of
like
weird.
that,
Like,
exactly.
what? What do you say?
Hey, and nothing else.
Trying to help the single men out here, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I think saying something just honest but meaningful. So maybe there's a reason that, hopefully there's a reason that they're asking me out. If they're asking me out, which means they've probably observed something about me, or there's something that they're interested in. So, hey, Caroline, I noticed, you really take your faith seriously and you love others well. That has intrigued me. Like, I'd love to get to know you better. Are you free for coffee? Or I really don't love the coffee thing. I'm more of like, take me to get like a smoothie, like, let's be original.
Oh, okay. I like that. Smoothie.
Acai bowl, those either works.
Acai bowl. Nice. Okay.
But yeah, I think just being genuine. There's not some perfect way to go about it, but
In person or phone, Instagram, like, what are your thoughts?
if you can do it in person, that's bold. I've been asked in person before, and by people that I know long term were not compatible, but the fact that they had the courage to ask me in person made me want to say yes. Like,
Gotcha.
it really, that just...
Do you give an answer in real time usually, or is it like, oh, I need to think about it, pray about it, or how have you done that?
So for strangers, I'll ask if they have a faith. There's no point of me giving out my phone number and then telling them later on, hey, my faith is important to me. If we're not on the same page, we don't really need to pursue this further. So I'll ask that. But if it's someone that I know that is a believer, usually I'll take time to pray about it. So I'll tell them that. And
Okay.
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like that. So single women that are listening, if a random man approaches you, ask them if they have a faith. Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
And it opens the door for conversation too. And if you're kind
Right.
and friendly, you never know. That could be planting a seed in itself.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, okay, 28 now. Do you feel like you're old at 28? Like, okay.
Well, my back hurts when I stand for too long, so sometimes.
Yeah. But, like people have in their head, oh, when you hit 30, like, oh, man, that's like super old. Especially, being a woman, how is it kind of being in your, later 20s, still single? Are you content? And any advice you'd have for other women that are out there trying to, be content being single?
Yeah. I would say, yes, I'm content. If I said that feelings of, oh, hey, I'm getting a little bit older, never creep into my mind, I'd be lying. That's just not very realistic.
Yeah.
But I do trust God's timing in my life. And I trust that he's going to bring the right person in the right time if it's his will for me to get married. And I know that in the meantime, there's purpose. And, he's growing things in me, and I'm able to use the time that I'm not pouring into a relationship with somebody else in other ways. So to pour into other people.
Yeah. Speaking about other people, so how important has it been, I know, since becoming a believer?
Yeah.
And even before, I mean, you had friends, but like, what has it been like, okay, having a community of other men and women to do things with, and how important has community been in your faith walk?
Yeah. So important. I've never had friendships like I have now. I mean, the way that I feel seen and known by the people in my life now, and simultaneously loved and encouraged. The bond is deeper. There's a clear difference now. And I know that my friends, they pray for me. They intercede on my behalf. They care about me. They care about the things that are important to me. And yeah, God has really brought so many women into my life. I mean, it's at the top of the list of things that I'm grateful for. He really provided that for me. And all of the women that I'm close with now, we will all have the same prayers around the same time, like for God to really provide godly community for us. And for anyone listening that doesn't have that right now, I want to encourage you that it does take time, and to not stop praying for it. Or if you're not praying for it right now, then pray for it, because God will answer those prayers.
What do you pray? Just, God, I want some friends, or what?
Well, I mean, depends on what you want. But one of my friends, she wrote down write down your prayers also. I need to do a better job of that too. Yeah. But it really shows you how God is working. But she wrote a very specific prayer of all these qualities that she wanted in friends. And maybe a year ago or so, she went back and found this, and she read it to us. And all of these qualities, like, we exhibit, and they're very specific too, of like, I can't remember all the things that she wrote, but like really weird, don't take themselves too seriously, along with just very specific things where it's like, yeah, this defines our dynamic.
Likes board games,
right?
Like random stuff like that. Yeah.
So ask God for what you need.
Yeah.
And I trust that he'll provide. But you also have to act too. I think, what is this analogy of, you've got to put your foot on the gas in order for God to turn the wheel. So if you're not doing anything at all, like God can move, and he will move in your life, but you need to be praying and trusting that God's going to come through.
Yeah. Speaking about trusting that God's going to come through, if you could speak directly to single women now that are listening to the podcast, who, I feel like I hear this a lot. Okay, there's no good guys out there, and man, like, all these guys, like, none of them are actually serious about their faith or following Jesus. I'm gonna, be single forever.
So single Christian women specifically? Or?
Yeah, single Christian women. What would you tell them specifically? And like, how have you and your friends navigated that when you're being single?
Yeah. Well, just the line of there are no good guys. There was a period in my life where I maybe kind of felt that way. And so if you feel that way, I'm sorry that you do, because there's likely experiences that you've been through and a reason that you're feeling that way. And so I'm sorry for the hurt that you've experienced.
Yeah. Some guys probably messed up as well, like, yeah.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean that God still can't use that. Like, use the pain. I know that to be true about my life for sure. There's a lot of purpose in the pain. But don't lose hope. They're out there. And
yep. Send them this podcast.
And I mean, in the meantime, pour into developing friendships, pour into your relationship with God, seek out other single Christian women. I think that's one big thing that's helped me, is that almost all of my friends are single. So we're all in the same space. And so we can relate to each other and we can understand, and you don't feel, you're not alone because God is with you, but you feel less alone in your feelings through those friendships because they're going through the same thing.
Yeah. I'm believing that God's going to, and he is, and he's going to continue to raise up single men that love Jesus and are going to date well. And I just know so many great women, including you.
That's what me and my girlfriends
say.
We're
I
like,
hope that there's more just godly men that come along. And part of my heart, and I believe God using the podcast, to reach single men now, and hopefully will into the future also. So do it, God. Believe in you.
Yeah.
Okay, last thing on dating. Do you have a specific story or experience of a date or a dating interaction that really stood out? Like, oh, wow, this really left a mark on me and this really encouraged me that a guy did well.
Yeah. So this summer, I was in my first relationship as a Christian. So we dated for a few months, and there were a lot of things that were really wonderful about the relationship. But ultimately, we were not God's best for each other. And so the day that we split up, I mean, truly, like, the day was just filled with so much, bittersweet, but so much love. So my previous relationship had really helped me understand what I want to feel in a relationship.
Yeah.
Helped me learn that a lot more. And in this relationship, I didn't quite feel those things. So we had opened up to each other about a lot of things over the course of a couple months. And so he understood my testimony, my faith journey to the extent that he could, and understood what the loss of that prior relationship meant to me.
Yeah.
And so the day that we split up, he actually ended up crying, feeling empathy and compassion for someone that he'd never met before, my previous relationship, thinking about, wow, like, this is the grief and the loss that I feel right now, and us splitting up, I can only imagine what he must have felt with your relationship being 4 or 5 times longer and him not having God to lean on and to find peace in through this. So for him to see him experience that, one, I mean, it just showed his maturity, but two, he was really able to release me with so much grace and no bitterness. He could have been bitter. He could have been very bitter or just only thinking about his own pain, but instead he offered to pray for someone that was important to me and to feel his pain.
Wow.
Yeah.
He prayed for your previous relationship?
I believe he has since then. He said he said in that breakup conversation that you saw him, it dawn on him start to understand what he likely felt. And he said, I will probably even say a prayer for him. I'll probably even pray for him.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we experience pain and loss and difficulty on earth, it actually brings us closer to Jesus and what he felt. I mean, imagine you're living on earth and you have all the power in the world, but you're choosing to humble yourself living as just a human when you can literally do anything. Like, you could call down angels from heaven to do whatever, and you're choosing to just be brutally beaten and ridiculed and abandoned by all your friends and be publicly killed. Like,
I mean, he experienced everything, if not more than what we experience. You know, our feelings, we're made in God's image. We have feelings and emotions for a reason. One verse in the Bible that I really love is when it talks about how Jesus was acquainted with grief. I don't know why,
Yeah.
like that verse just really touches me, but he's not removed from our pain. He understands it. He understands it more than we do. And it pains him. You know, it pains him when we're in pain.
yeah,
It's like any parent, you know, you don't want to see your child hurting, but sometimes you know that they have to go through difficult things in order to get to a better outcome or to grow as a person, to, you know?
right.
And so my pain has given me so much more empathy and compassion and patience for others. And and the ability to relate to them, to witness to them, to bear in their suffering too, to be an encouragement to other people. And had I not had the story that I have, I wouldn't be able to do any of those things.
Right. Right. Do you have a Bible verse for the season of life that you're in, or your life in general, like a life verse, so to speak?
Yeah. So Daniel 3:18, essentially what it means to me, a more broken down version is, and if not, he is still good.
Yep.
I love that entire chapter in the Bible, but that I've had that verse on my TV stand pretty much for the last 2.5 years since I started my faith journey. And God has proved that time and time again. That doesn't mean that things always go the way that I want them to go. Most of the time they don't. But God still works through everything. And he still shows up in little ways along the way to encourage me. And so that I can grow an understanding of what he's doing and to have a broader perspective. Because what we see is so small.
Yeah.
But God sees the whole picture. That verse, actually, so the day that my last relationship ended, I don't know if I told you this, but on the way to the breakup, essentially, there was, I got stopped at a stoplight, and there was a car right in front of me. And on the license plate, it said, "He is good, G-U-D."
G-U-D. That was a license plate in front of you?
He is good.
And you knew you were going to go break up?
Yep.
Yeah.
Just like there have been so many instances like that where
Yeah, and that's like your life verse. If not, he is still good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, wow.
where God's just very clearly shown up.
Yeah.
I will say when I saw that though, I didn't even immediately register it. It took another day or two for me to think back and say, wait, whoa, because I was in so much pain at the time and
Yeah.
feeling so anxious leading up to this conversation. So that's just an encouragement that if you think that God's not there or that God's not showing up or showing you any signs, he likely is. You just have to pay attention.
Open my eyes, God.
Yeah.
Help me to see.
Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Okay, I'm not going to keep going.
I don't even know what that song's called.
I want
Open
to
my eyes,
see
maybe?
you.
Drop it in the comments if you're listening. You know what song that is.
Yeah.
That's like a elementary school
Yeah.
French family song.
Yeah.
Love it. All right, Caroline, wrapping things up. Any encouragement you'd have for me? 29, single,
Wow.
gonna be 30 here in March.
Yeah.
Don't have as much dating experience as you, but
Yeah.
what would you tell me as your big brother?
I think keep waiting patiently and be faithful with what God gives you, with what he's doing. I mean, I think he's clearly called you to do this podcast. And something that I'm learning is we don't have to do anything for God to give us good gifts. Just because he loves us and we're his children, he wants to do that. And so I don't want you to feel like, oh, once I complete this podcast, or once we get here, God's going to bless me.
Yeah. Yeah.
God's already blessing you along the whole way.
Yeah.
But you don't have to do or earn anything to get that blessing. So.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's how I feel. Like, I want to use this time to bless other people, you know?
Yeah.
Hopefully it's blessing the audience that's listening. And, 30 episodes in now. Kind of wild. Back when I started this, I was like, maybe I'll make it, I feel like God gave me the vision for 52. And I was like, that's going to be a lot of work. But here we are over halfway through now, So just taking it one step at a time, one day at a time.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for coming on, Caroline.
Thanks for having me. This was great.
Last thing I ask everybody that comes on, so specifically single men that are listening, and I actually have two groups of single men I want you to talk to. So single men that are not Christians or that are not following Jesus, that somehow they came across this episode.
Yeah.
They've been listening now for about an hour. What advice would you have for them?
Yeah. Well, I think if they clicked on the podcast, Single Man Podcast, they're looking for dating advice maybe, I would ask them, what are you looking for in dating? Like, what are you hoping to find? I mean, I was hoping to find love, acceptance, fulfillment, all these things. I get this perfect relationship and then realize, wait, something's still missing. Yeah. So I would just encourage you, if anything, if any of these episodes are resonating with you, God is likely tugging on your heart in some way, and you just need to open the door. So take the next step, whatever that looks like for you. You don't have to rush anything. Maybe you want to go attend a church service and sit in the back. Maybe you just want to say a prayer. Hey, God, are you there? Like, I don't know if you exist. I don't know if Jesus is real, but if you are, like, here I am. I'm trying to seek you. Help me. Yeah. Read the Gospels. Read a Bible verse. Just start wherever feels right to you, and God will meet you there.
Yeah, that's what you did. You just got a Bible, started reading. Yeah. I recommend reading John, the book of John first. Yeah. And then...
Not just because your real name is John, but because...
Whoa, that's breaking podcast news.
I thought you were going to say, like, breaking the rules. I was like, I didn't get a contract to read before this. He makes everyone sign an extensive 12-page.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just it written in the Holy Spirit.
NDA.
That's all. So, okay. If you could all now speak to single men that are listening that are Christians, that are following Jesus, because that's also a large portion of our audience. Yeah. What encouragement would you have them? Okay, we're trying to, be better single men, date better, pursue women better. What would you leave them?
I'll reiterate, be intentional, be prayerful about dating, be in a place, know that if you're going to be pursuing dating, that you're in a place to date well. So, I mean, what might that look like? Build community, build relationships with other men, get involved in serving somewhere. Make sure that you're growing in the fruits of the Spirit, and that if you are going to be dating somebody, that you're going to treat her like Jesus would treat her.
It's good. Love it.
Yeah.
Amazing, Caroline.
Thanks
so much for coming on. How was it?
Great. Yeah.
Awesome, Caroline. Thank you so much. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. If you're still listening, would love for you to let Caroline and I know in the comments on YouTube and Spotify. You can leave a comment what you thought, any pieces of advice or takeaways that resonated with you. And I know it would really encourage both Caroline and I. And 30 episodes in. Woo! We made it. If you haven't seen the previous 29, go back and check them out. And leave a like and make sure you're subscribed and following on all platforms. And check the link in the description as well. You can join our email list. You can also Share the link with friends so that they can check it out too. Maybe there's a single man in your life that you think would resonate well with Caroline's story. Thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in this week. And we'll be back next week for episode 31. You got to come and see what's next after this women's series. Got something else planned for everybody.
Gonna be amazing.
Love you, Caroline.
Love
Thanks
you
so much
too.
for coming on.
Oh, okay.
Do the first ever hug on the podcast.
Yep, this is nice and awkward. Okay, can we eat pizza now?
Love you.
Love you too.
Have a great rest of your Friday, everybody. This has been Carlton French.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Single Man Podcast. If someone you know would benefit from this week's episode, I'd love for you to text them the link and invite them to listen. You never know how a simple invitation could change someone's life. We'll be back next Friday at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, with a new episode. Until then, check out the video version of the podcast on YouTube, and you can engage with us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook.